everyone, I'm Larissa Dubose, your wine educator, and welcome to Wine Etiquette 101. So I have a secret. Those bubbles in your bottomless mimosa brunch are probably not champagne. I said it, it's the truth, and I'm here to tell you why. So, champagne is not champagne unless it comes from the Champagne region of France. Point blank, period. Champagne is the blueprint, it's the benchmark. That's why we typically reference all sparkling wines as champagne. But again, we're here to be wine connoisseurs, so let's step our wine knowledge up a bit. Now, there are a few California producers that will put California champagne on their wine, but much to the chagrin of champagne, it's still not champagne. So, what are they called? It depends on where the wine is from. If it's coming from Italy, it's more than likely called a Prosecco. It could also be called the Franciacorta. If it's coming from Spain, it's called Cava. And then you can still have sparkling wines from France that are outside of the Champagne region, names like Crémant, and you can also have a Blanquette de Limoux. Again, with old world wines, they name their wines by region. Keep that in mind. So why is champagne so much more expensive than your typical sparkling wines? I'm glad you asked. So a lot of it comes from how the wine is made in and of itself. There are strict laws and parameters in place that have to be adhered to in order for a wine to be called champagne. Just because the grapes are grown there and you throw it in a bottle doesn't make it champagne. The way this champagne is made is called the traditional method. The traditional method means that the secondary fermentation happened in the same bottle. So, when you make wine, you have to add yeast to what is called the must. That's when the grapes are crushed. The fermentation happens because the yeast eats up the sugar in the grape must, and it turns it into CO2, alcohol, and heat. So, with the secondary fermentation happening within the same bottle, the winemaker will add yeast and sugar to the bottle, and then they put a cap crown on it. Think about a beer cap. Once the yeast eats the sugar, it starts to give off CO2, but because it can't escape, that's what gives you the bubbles. Once those yeast cells eat the sugar, they get hungry, they get full, and then they die. They're called lees once they die. And aging on the lees is a super important component of champagne. Once the lees are formed, you have to get them out. So there's a process that's called riddling, and then there's a more industrialized way that's called their gyro pallets. And essentially what it does is it takes the bottle that's like this, and it eventually will tilt it so that the lees gently rest here. And then what happens is called disgorgement. Once the lees are here, the bottle is dipped into a freezing mixture. So once the lees pop off, yes, champagne pops off too. And of course, you're gonna lose some wine because of that process. So then the winemaker puts in what we call the dosage. This is a mixture of wine and sugar to give the final sweetness level of the champagne. That's a lot. Now you understand why your champagnes cost so much. And now we're not even talking about vintage champagne. Now let's think about other ways that sparkling wines are made. More than likely, the wine that's in your bottomless mimosa brunch that you've been turning up at. It's more than likely going through carbonation. The classic just adds some CO2 to the wine. Or there's another method that's used with Prosecco that's called the tank method. And what happens is that the wine is made, but instead of going into the bottle, it actually goes into a pressurized tank. And the secondary fermentation happens there. And then from there, they put the wine into the bottle. A very cost-effective way to make sparkling wine. It's still delicious, it's still good quality, but again, when we think about how champagne is made and why champagne is so expensive, this is why people found additional ways to make it happen. I want you all to be empowered. So the next time you go to the bar, instead of asking for champagne, ask for the sparkling wines by the glass. These are ways that make you look like a professional, a wine connoisseur, and they know that you're hip. And you have me to thank for that. And you're welcome. Cheers, y'all. I'm Larissa Dubose, your wine educator, and you're watching Wine Etiquette 101.